So, I know lately I've been all over the place, reviewing cases and video cards, etc. But today I am back with a motherboard, but not any old motherboard, no. I am coming with arguably the most expensive mainstream motherboard on the market today. The X299 powered Rampage VI Extreme Edition from Asus. How much does it cost, you ask? Well, nothing less than 650 bucks. Now, why so much money? Why is it that expensive? Would it make my computer go faster? Would it make my computer look better? Would it make me a better person? Will it? Will it? Will it? Well, what say you we dig right into it, young sailor? Yeah, I tried to sound like a pirate. No? This is not my first Extreme Edition. A few months back, you might remember, I did review the Z270 Extreme Edition right behind me. And a few weeks ago, I did review the very good and good looking Zenith Extreme for our AMD Threadripper processor. And the common thing between those two boards were the prices. They were the most expensive available board for their respective chipset, the Z270 and the X399. And it was only a matter of time until Asus would bless the X299 chipset with its very own Extreme Edition. But what is so special about Extreme motherboards? Well, they usually feature the very best available technology for the day. They also go for the most extravagant RGB lighting, a very polished finish, and a higher level of customization for the enthusiasts out there. So you're paying a rather large premium compared to the entry-level motherboards, but we do get a lot back for it. And with such a large tag price, we have high expectations. Actually very high. Where they met? Well, without any further ado, unboxing. It is a little bit messy, but that's always a good sign. First, I have our RGB extension cables, addressable and not, 3 thermistor sensors, extension cable for our fan extension card, 6 SATA cables, our front panel bridge connector, a fan mount to add airflow to our build, 3 sets of M.2 screw and screw raisers, our DIMM.2 plate supporting up to 2 M.2 solid-state drives, our 2, 3 and 4-way SLI bridges, our fan extension card, a R6E mount for a water block, a bunch of screws for our fan extension card, a GPU support mount, they can get heavy, our dual band Wi-Fi antenna, our WiGig antenna, a USB stick with all our software and drivers, and finally the usual manual, stickers, cup coasters and coupons. Alright, so let's take a closer look to our motherboard. So let's start with the obvious. This is an EATX form factor motherboard, meaning that it is 30.5 cm long for a width of 27.7 cm. So make sure to get the right chassis for this kind of motherboard. You want something a little bit bigger and a full-fledged EATX casing. The back of our motherboard features a backplate, which is here to protect the soldering points from indelicate builders, and also sandwiches an addressable RGB strip right between our logic board and the back shield. And right here we can note a smaller backplate which compresses a thermopad right on the soldering point of our CPU capacitor. Talking of which, our CPU socket is an LGA 2066. This socket only supports the new X family lineup of processor. Now this is where things get a little bit messy. We have a wide range of Kaby Lake and Skylake so-called X series processors, and those ones not only come with different PCIe lanes capacity but also with different RAM abilities, but I'll get back on this later. The point I'm trying to make is make sure to select the right CPU for your build. Do pay attention to how many PCIe lanes it will provide and how many RAM channel it can support. Talking of which, our RAM features the quad channel configuration that we are used to on X series motherboards. Any X-type processor with quad core and lower can only activate up to 2 RAM channels, meaning that they can support only up to 64 GB of DDR4 RAM with a maximum overclocking capacity of 4200 MHz. Any X-type processor with more than 4 cores will activate the full quad channel configuration, supporting a maximum of 128 GB of DDR4 RAM and overclockable as well up to 4200 MHz. Staying in the memory, we can accommodate up to 3 M.2 solid-state drive on this motherboard, 2 of them on the M.2 right here, and the third M.2 solid-state drive right under our chipset heat shield. I was a little bit disappointed to see that on the back plate of our heat shield we do not have the usual thermopad that Asus usually places on higher end motherboards, so I'm not sure what that was about. The X299 chipset is of course Optane ready, meaning that all of our M.2 solid-state drive can swap data transfer up to a maximum speed of 32 gigabit per second each, PCIe Express wise. All of our PCIe lanes are 3rd generation compliant, and the board features 5 individual slots. One of them 4 slot up to 4 speed, and 4 of them 16 slots with different speed ability. We can note that the 4 16 slots PCI Express are all metallically reinforced. And that does mean that they can all individually support the full weight of a video card. So theoretically, we could run a 4-way video card configuration on this motherboard. Only the 1st and 3rd position PCIe Express slots can deliver a full 16 bus speed in a dual GPU configuration. Any additional GPU will be sharing the remaining bandwidths among them. If we have a 3-way GPU configuration, we will find ourselves in a 16 by 8 by 16 full bus speed, and if we have a quad GPU configuration, we will find ourselves in a 16 by 8 by 8 by 8 full bus speed. Alright, time to take a look at our peripherals. First, one thing I really like is the fact that there is an integrated I/O shield. I think this is something we could get used to even on entry level, so Asus or anybody else. That would be a good thing to see more often, not only on the higher end. Starting from the left, we have our usual BIOS and clear CMOS button. Here we have what we've seen on the Zenith Extreme, our dual band Wi-Fi and our WiGig adapter. This is a darker one down there. And what the WiGig adapter is, basically a much larger frequency Wi-Fi which can transfer data up to 7 gigabit per second, but in a very short range, so within 10 feet of your computer. So if you're working on, large file transfer, if you put your laptop right next to it, you can, and it's compatible, you can connect to your WiGig signal and go very fast. But it won't work well as soon as you go 3 meters away or if there's a wall or anything like that. But very useful. I know it's going to be very useful to me. Up to you to see if it is going to be useful to you. Next to it, we have 8 USB 3.1 first generation, meaning that they can transfer data up to 5 gigabit per second. We have not one, but 2 LAN network adapter. The red one is a 1 gigabit, which has been surge protected, that's why it is red. And the one on the left, the darker one, is an integrated 10 gigabit Ethernet plug, and that is the first time I see it integrated. I've seen it on the Zenith Extreme. I've seen it as an accessory, but here I'm very happy to see it built in. This motherboard has been definitely designed with large data transfer in mind. Alright, so next we have 2 3.1 second generation USB plug, one type A and one type C. As you may already know, they can transfer data up to 10 gigabit per second. And finally, our usual 5 analog channel audio plugs. And as you can see, they are all golden. We do not have the usual color-coded plastic ring around them, and that's because we have an LED which will lit up in that particular color code for us. So that's pretty cool and very good looking, if I may say so myself. Alright, so let's take a look at our other data transfer peripherals. On the left we have our U.2 connector, which will be for our proprietary solid state drive and which will allow a data transfer up to 10 gigabit per second. Next to it we have 6 3.0 SATA plugs, which can all individually transfer data up to 6 gigabit per second. Okay, so we just reviewed the general aspect of our motherboard. Needless to say, there's still a lot of features in there we need to talk about. I'm gonna go first on the enthusiastic side of the motherboard. This is where Asus has tried to show off its abilities. And the first thing I'd like to notice is that this is of course completely designed for custom water cooling system. You can plug directly on the motherboard up to 7 different fans, and if that's not enough, we can also add another extension with, I think it's either 6 or 8 other fans, so that's a lot of fans. So I think up to 16 fans is what this board can accommodate. We can also connect 2 dedicated water pumps directly onto the board, meaning that we can easily configure and run a dual custom water configuration cooling system with this board. We also have a flow meter right here, a bunch of different thermosensors, built-in and externals, and finally a water block sensor right there. Very cool, very good for custom water cooling systems, definitely an enthusiast must. Here we already have some of our money back. But where Asus did a real innovative move is in the monitoring system of the motherboard. On its southern side, we will see a bunch of LEDs and switches which will allow us to easily troubleshoot more complex issue that we might meet in the operation of our board. For example, in addition of our usual boot VGA, DRAM and CPU LEDs, we have, for the very first time, RAM channel LED, meaning that we will be able to monitor every RAM channel separately. I cannot count how many times I had to play around and put on, put off the different RAM models to pinpoint which RAM channel is causing a certain Q code error. And from now on, with a single glance at the LED board, I'll be able to know which channel is causing the issue. And that's gonna save us a lot of time. It's gonna save us a lot of time and a lot of stress. And small things like this means a lot to enthusiast builders. A lot. Next to it, we have another series of LEDs which are connected to our 16-lane PCI Express slots. And again, this will give us the ability to monitor if everything is running as it should. And right underneath it, we have a series of switches. And those switches will allow us to physically put on and off those PCIe Expresses if they are causing a problem, and to help us further troubleshoot any kind of issue arising from them. And this little section of the board is, for me, where real innovation happen. And I really hope that this will trickle down to more entry and medium range motherboards in the future, because once you get used to it, I really don't want to do without. And I really don't want to pay $650 to have access to it. So yeah, it would be nice to see it more in middle and entry level motherboards. In the same context, we have 6 buttons directly soldered on the motherboard: the start, reset, safe boot, retry button, BIOS switch, and the usual memory OK button. Again, all those will simplify an enthusiast builder's life when it comes to test your build without having to connect all the front panel connectors, and to troubleshoot if there is any posting issue and etc. And okay, and here comes my favorite feature of this board. You might have noted that surprisingly there's no visible QLED screen here. Well, actually the QLED screen is hidden under the roof of our I/O panel right here. And that part of our I/O roof is actually a mirror. Yeah, it's not plastic, it's actually a see-through mirror, and when you'll start your computer, all your Q codes and different temperature information or even cool GIF animation will be running right here. So that, for me, is only the start of how cool this board looks. The thing where I was really disappointed is when I tried to lit the motherboard with my usual 5V ATX 24-pin plug, nothing came on. And I thought that maybe there's a problem with the board, but no, that's because all of our RGB LED on this board are all addressable. Every LED present here are individually configurable, so we can have a more intimate and a more a precisely configurable RGB scheme running on our build. All over here, around the ROG symbol, the ROG logo, right here, and there's a Republic of Gamers logo. You remember this one? The RGB addressable cable, which is sandwiched between the backplate and the logic board. Whoa, this thing is going to shine. Of course, that is not the end of it. We also have 3 different RGB connectors around the board. 2 of them are the normal standard RGB Aura compliant connectors, and 1 more addressable RGB connector right here. Whew. In conclusion, let's start by saying that this is a $650 US motherboard. One, if not the most expensive mainstream motherboard available on the market. So obviously this is not for everyone. And the first question I asked in the beginning of this video, is it worth it? Does it meet this very high level of expectations? It will depend who you are. If you are an enthusiast, somebody who's gonna go for a custom water cooling system, or very simply the most extravagant looking and looking for the best level of customization, yes, this is worth it. You are going to have access to innovations which are found in no other board, specifically when it comes to monitoring and troubleshooting. But if you are a mid-range or a first-time builder, I would not advise you to go for this kind of option. I'd go more for prime level entry or even Strix motherboard, which will give you 80% of what's available here and budget room to get a discrete video card or invest in the CPU you're really looking for. But as far as I go personally, of course, I cannot wait to schedule a X299 build, and I would not go for anything else but this. All right.